Good evening and welcome. At this moment, a high-level cabinet committee on security meeting is deliberating India's response to the attack against Indians in the Kashmir Valley. The critical question, how should India respond to the Pahalgam terror attack? That's my top focus on the news track tonight.
In 2016, Uri army base attacked. Response: surgical strike. In 2019, Pulwama army convoy attacked. Response: Balakot airstrikes. In 2025, Pahalgam terror attack. Response: Prime Minister chairs key security meet. India vows strong response. What will India do? That is our big focus on News Track.
It's been over 24 hours since Pakistani terrorists killed 28 Indian tourists in Jammu and Kashmir. All eyes now are on India's response. What can and will the Modi government do? The Prime Minister is currently chairing the Cabinet Committee on Security meeting at his residence at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. The key huddle has been underway for over 2 hours now. Last night, in his post on X, the Prime Minister had said, "Our resolve to fight terrorism is unshakable and will get even stronger." The question is, what will this response translate into?
Amit Shah's message of solidarity with the victims of the Pahalgam terror attack. Hours after the dastardly terror attack in Pahalgam, the Modi government swung into action. Prime Minister Modi cut short his Saudi visit and touched down in Delhi this morning, heading straight into a huddle at the Delhi airport with the External Affairs Minister, the NSA and the Foreign Secretary. Meanwhile, Home Minister Amit Shah held high-level meetings in Srinagar. Home Minister Shah also laid wreath at the mortal remains of the 28 innocents who died in the terror strike. As Shah expressed his condolences to the family members, heartbreaking scenes played out as shattered women and children broke down in the presence of the Home Minister. Shah also visited the site of the attack, his chopper landing directly in the meadows where blood was spilled just yesterday. Shah was given a detailed briefing by personnel on ground on how the terrorists opened fire at tourists and then escaped.
This is the location. We have been here since morning and we've seen a lot of activity as far as various security force personnel coming in. You had the NIA team, you had different agencies coming in and taking stock and also gathering evidence, trying to check the crime scene. You also had the Home Minister who was here He came in a chopper, and so were senior officials of the Home Ministry of Intelligences who were here. In fact, more than anything, it was an attempt by the BJP government, by the Home Minister, to send this message across. It was more about messaging that the country is in fact united in this hour of grief.
Shah also visited the injured at the Anantnag hospital, assuring them of all possible help. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has reiterated the government's message of a fitting response to Pakistan.
हम सिर्फ उन लोगों तक नहीं पहुंचेंगे जिन्होंने इस घटना को अंजाम दिया है, हम उन तक भी पहुंचेंगे जिन्होंने पर्दे के पीछे बैठकर हिंदुस्तान की सरजमी पर ऐसी नापाक हरकतों की साजिशें रची हैं। ऐसी हरकतों का जिम्मेदार और इसके जिम्मेदार लोगों को आने वाले कुछ ही समय में जोरदार तरीके से नजर आएगा। मैं देशवासियों को आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं।
Jammu and Kashmir CM Omar Abdullah attended the funeral of a local who was also shot dead by the terrorists. The Chief Minister will chair an all-party meeting tomorrow to address the massive tourist exodus from the valley.
उन लोगों के साथ ताज़ियत और हमदर्दी का इजहार जिनके ऊपर और जिनके साथ ये सदमा बीता है, और मैं यहाँ इन सबको यकीन दिलाने आया हूँ कि इस मौके पर हुकूमत इनके साथ खड़ी है और जितना हम इनके लिए कर सकेंगे हम कर लेंगे।
The Cabinet Committee on Security, chaired by Prime Minister Modi, saw top ministers in attendance, and it's wait and watch for now as to how the government chooses to respond to Pakistan's bloody provocation. With Mir Farid in Pahalgam, Bureau Report, India Today.
I want to go across live to Mir Farid, who joins us from Pahalgam. He's been reporting on the aftermath of this dastardly terror attack. Mir, we know that security forces are hot on the heels of the terrorists who they think orchestrated the attack on Pahalgam. Have they been able to establish contact? Do they have a good sense of where these terrorists are? Because very likely that they're split in different directions. So how is this operation coming along?
Yes, Rahul, absolutely right you are when you say that they could have split in different directions, because initially the inputs that were coming in suggested that there were three, but I can confirm to you based on multi-agency inputs that there were at least 6 to 7. So once they carried out this attack, they may have spilled or in fact split in different directions of 2 to 3 per group. And as we have been reporting since morning, that area, once they carried out the attack, the foliage, the mountains, the terrain is such that they could have easily slipped into that particular area or different areas, and then in fact they had a clear escape plan, because this area was recceed. They knew that they are attacking an area where there is no security force presence around, so they carried out the attack and they also had an escape plan. That is what our sources tell us. But yes, they're hot on their heels. Multi-agency effort right now, be it the army, commandos, CRPF, police, all of them are together in this. And when Amit Shah, the Home Minister, landed there, obviously on-spot directions have gone from him of an absolute free hand to the security forces in this scenario. But at the same time, there are also questions on the security lapse, something that we have also been discussing. So this is something that has multiple angles, and the government wants to ensure that each angle is taken care of, because this is a security lapse in many ways, an intel failure of massive magnitude, considering that it was not one or two but a big group that was moving through the Pahalgam jungles. And in spite of that, this very sensitive area with so many tourists cut off was kept unmanned and unprotected. So all these angles are being taken care of, but already there has been a spurt in anti-terror operations post the clear directions, because we have an operation happening in Kulgam where a top TRF commander could be hiding, and then you also had an operation in Uri where 2 infiltrators armed were shot dead. In Bandipura there is an operation. So multiple operations right now to take care of the security situation, that too before the Amarnath Yatra, because that is the next massive challenge to protect, because if inputs are to be believed, while they carried out this attack, their main target is Amarnath Yatra, and if they can target civil targets, tourists, obviously
they can easily target yatris. So that is the next big challenge, and probably in the coming days you will have specific meetings targeted at ensuring foolproof security arrangements, multi-tier security for the Amarnath Yatra. Rahul?
Mir Farid, for your reportage. Thank you. We'll come back to you for more later. Gaurav Sawant joins us. Gaurav, very crucial CCS meeting underway. Explain to our viewers what's likely to be discussed, because from what I understand, this is where the political leadership will give sanction to the military for different kinds of options. Those options will be discussed, detailed, thrashed out, and then a clearance will come through. So explain your understanding of this meeting and its significance and the likely outcome.
Rahul, this is, as you well know, the highest decision-making body in the country when it comes to any issue, any matter military or security related, the Cabinet Committee on Security. And the Prime Minister is being given inputs by all stakeholders. So the Home Minister, who's just come from Kashmir, is giving details about what he saw and what he was briefed about the situation on ground. The External Affairs Minister with the external ramifications. This is where they deliberate and then decide what the next course of action would be. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh gave an indication when he delivered the Marshal Arjun Singh Memorial Lecture, where he said there will be consequences not just for those who carried out the terror attack, but also those who were behind the scenes, पर्दे के पीछे रहकर जिन्होंने किया, उनके खिलाफ भी कार्रवाई होगी, or words to that effect is what he said. But if you go by past precedents, Rahul, 2016, when the terror attack took place at the Uri base, India's response time was 10 days. In Pulwama, the response time at Balakot was 12 days. So whether the government waits 10 days, 12 days, a fortnight or a month, it will very clearly depend on when the government thinks it's best to teach Pakistan's military jihad complex a lesson, and a lesson which will be lasting. So will the response be kinetic or non-kinetic? A combination of both or more is something that will be deliberated upon, and whether initially Pakistan will be given an opportunity to come clean and then action taken, because the government does follow a policy which will hold the government in good stead even internationally.
Okay, Gaurav Sawant, will come back to you once we know what the CCS has decided. There's likely to be a MEA briefing as well, so we'll track all of that. There's a clear Pak imprint on the Pahalgam terror attack. Top intelligence sources have told India today that terrorists carried military-grade weapons. They had helmet-mounted cameras, and they were in touch with handlers in Pakistan. Munish Pandey and Manjeet Negi with the details.
These are the faces of terror. Probe agencies have released these sketches of the terrorist. Forensic analysis and survivor testimonies have revealed shattering details. Terrorists used military-grade weapons, suggesting that the attackers were well-equipped and well-trained. They used advanced communication devices, indicating coordination and external logistical support. The precision and planning of the attack points to involvement of trained handlers, not local amateurs. Intelligence intercepts point to direct links between the attackers and Pakistan-based operatives. Digital footprints of the attackers have been traced to safe houses in Muzaffarabad and Karachi. Pahalgam terrorists had clear targets in mind. They chose Baisaran Valley deliberately, a non-motorable area, knowing that there will be no place for tourists to hide and that rescue will take time. Were government officials and families primary targets of terrorists? Sources have told India today that it was a specific operation, as some government officials and families were on a group vacation in Pahalgam. Terrorists checked identity cards before killing victims. Some government officials are also among those injured. 3 judges of Kerala High Court are also among the survivors. They left Pahalgam hours before the attack. India has vowed a strong and befitting response.
और हम सिर्फ उन लोगों तक नहीं पहुंचेंगे जिन्होंने इस घटना को अंजाम दिया है। हम उन तक भी पहुंचेंगे जिन्होंने पर्दे के पीछे बैठकर हिंदुस्तान की सरजमी पर ऐसी नापाक हरकतों की साजिशें रची हैं। मैं इस मंच से देशवासियों को आश्वस्त करता हूं, घटना के मद्देनजर भारत सरकार वो हर कदम उठाएगी जो जरूरी और उपयुक्त होगा।
All eyes now are on India's response. What will it be and when? With Munish Pandey and Manjeet Negi, Bureau Report, India Today.
This is something, frankly, that only military commanders, based on political green signals, will actually be deciding. But since there's so much curiosity, I've got some very sharp military and strategic minds to try and make sense of India's options and the likely escalation ladder if we go out and strike against Pakistan. I'm joined on this broadcast by Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain. He's been General Officer Commanding of 15 Corps in Srinagar. We've got SP Waid. He's been the Director General of Police in Jammu and Kashmir. I have Kanwal Shukla, Strategic Affairs Expert. Brahma Chalani, one of India's best known national security experts. And I have Manoj Joshi, Distinguished Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. General Hasnain, I'll come to you first. We've had a cross-border terror counter-strike, covert operation. We've had a airstrike. We know that it's highly likely that the handlers of the ISI would have cleared out whichever terrorists were in launch pads or in training camps already. Given the current state of play, as best as you can, explain to those watching at this moment India's potential response options.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for inviting me for the program. And I start by expressing my deep regrets for the unnecessary loss of life. But to come back specifically to your question, first of all, Rahul, you are also a part of the military community. And I want to make one thing clear. The Indian Army does not discuss offensive options. Not publicly, not even privately. But having said that, there is a way of discussing this. And that is to look at what your objectives can. You are not going to be looking at the targets, but definitely I'm sure the CCS would discuss what the objectives should be. Should the objectives be such that you send out a message of deterrence, that you do an act as large as one which will deter Pakistan from doing something in the future? That would mean something very, very big. The second part is to send a message. The messaging part was done at a lower level during the surgical strikes, and in the escalatory ladder, you can say that a slightly higher notch was implemented in the Balakot strike. But both were not intended for deterrence. Both were intended to message. The messaging was very clear. You strike and I will strike you back. I will strike you back at a bigger scale, but I will strike you back. It was not meant for any aspect of deterrence at all. The last is the objective, which should be seen in the light of the impact and the response from Pakistan thereafter. That means, at the end of the day, an option in which those taking a decision decide that going to war even as a result of the impact of our action would be acceptable to us. This is the spectrum that we are looking at in terms of objectives. Take your pick from this. I'm sure the CCS would have discussed all this today and decided, and we'll hear about it in the days to come.
Colonel Ajay Shukla, whatever we do, there may be a Pak response. We've had a Army Covert Special Para Forces strike. We've had an Air Force strike. Without getting into technical details, your broad understanding of India's options, the likely response, General Hasnain talking of a very, very big strike, creating deterrence. How should India create deterrence after what happened at Pahalgam?
Well, it's actually quite simple. You create deterrence by creating the forces to strike at a particular place and the decision-making machinery that gives it the go-ahead and so on. But I don't think any of us should hold our breaths waiting for decisions from the government. Both this and the last government have faced this problem of cross-border terrorism. It has had sort of numerous examples of soldiers getting beheaded, their heads being taken away and so on. And every single time, whether it is after Uri or after Pahalgam or you name the place, we have, at the end of the outrage that has been perpetrated upon us, we are left with no options apparently that can actually take revenge, go and strike or create deterrence. So I don't see why this particular incident should be different from the last. if the government has done sort of the creation of options and created the mechanism that will impose a cost on the Pakistani side, well, now is the time to let it go ahead.
You know, the fact is, Manu Joshi, that Inder Kumar Gujral, when he was Prime Minister, he wound down the raw assets that we had inside Pakistan. That entire covert program shut down, restarted after Prime Minister Modi came to power. And that's what Ajay Shukla is saying. If you got some assets inside Pakistan, this is the time to show. If Ajit Doval, the IB chief, the RAW chief have built up these capacities, this is when, like the Mossad would do, like the Israelis would do, this is when you bring your best boots to the table. Manoj?
Yeah. Well, that is just the intelligence option is just one of the options. There are other options as well, meaning, I'd like to point out to you that the General Hussain said that Balakot and Uri were basically messaging and not deterrence. My point is, what is deterrence? What will it take to deter Pakistan? If we can find that out, then we should do that. We should deter Pakistan.
How do you think we can deter Pakistan? What does deterrence look like to you?
You need to take politico-military options. See, Balakot and Uri did not help because we've been having killings continuously since then. Continuously. I can give you all the lists and of what has been happening in Jammu and Kashmir. So the politico-military options, we have found, for example, that the Financial Action Task Force was very useful. We could not get Pakistan to punish Hafiz Saeed, Ziaur Rahman Lakwi, and Sajid Mir. But because of the FATF, the Pakistanis suddenly woke up and they put them in prison. Now, what they're doing in prison, I don't know. But this is the only instance where the perpetrators of a much worse tragedy of Mumbai in 2008 have finally been punished in 2022. So what I'm trying to get at is that the FATF may not be the best option, but it may be one of the viable options. But of course, we cannot remove the military. It's the viable military option. Whatever you do has to be credible. Clearly, Balakot and Uri were not credible. And so we need to devise something. And as you said earlier yourself, that this is something which our security managers need to figure out and think about it. Our security managers, our diplomats, it's their task. We know what the public of the country knows what it wants. It wants deterrence. It wants Pakistan to lay off.
Okay, Brahma Chelani, what can that deterrence look like? Manoj Joshi says Balakot and Uri weren't enough. I disagree to the extent that at least for a while it made the Pakistanis back off and there wasn't this big a terror attack like there was with the kind of frequency there was previously. But yes, it wasn't permanent deterrence. If we need, can there be permanent deterrence? If there is to be permanent deterrence, what does the military need to do?
Well, let's look at the larger picture. In terms of economic and military power and other material measures, India dwarfs Pakistan. Yet the much smaller Pakistan continues to bleed India. Pakistan makes up for the power asymmetry with India through stronger political will. That's where India has been lacking, the political will. And another area where India has been lacking is a consistent Pakistan policy. We have had successive governments in India who have failed to pursue a consistent Pakistan policy. Every prime minister who takes office seeks to make peace with Pakistan. Vajpayee did that, Manmohan Singh did that, Modi also did that. He landed in Lahore unannounced. We have not had a consistent Pakistan policy in a long, long time. In fact, the country is taken through a roller coaster ride on Pakistan. And after every major terror attack, we have the same debate before things return to business as usual. You can only deter Pakistan if you are willing to impose sustained costs on Pakistan. Sustained costs.
What does that mean? De-jargonize that. What
One
does
of
permanent deterrence and sustained costs mean?
See, one of kinetic operation, like the Balakot airstrike, is not going to be sufficient. It may, even if it's a major operation, even if it delivers a major blow to Pakistan, can only buy peace for some time. Sustained cost means you have to use all weapons at your disposal, not just kinetic. All other non-military options also have to be employed on a sustained, continuing basis. And that requires consistency in approach, which is where India's weakness lies. It's compounded by the fact that India has a risk-averse culture. India has a reactive culture. We are not proactive. We respond to aggression. Same thing happened when China encroached on Indian borderlands in Ladakh. We were caught napping, and why are we caught napping again and again? This is a
Okay, but you're saying we haven't been doing very much. There have been so many reports in Pakistani media of different terrorists being bumped off by unnamed assassins. And the Pakistanis have been criving a lot about that. So it's not as if we've been sitting completely on our backsides. The fact is, you're saying that there isn't permanent deterrence, and that I agree with. I want to spend some time with the former Director General
You're giving credence to Pakistani.
No, I'm saying I don't know who killed them, but it's good that these terrorists are dying. I don't know who killed them, and there's no way of knowing that. But SP Vaid, just the fact that there is this big meadow, very beautiful meadow, one of the prominent tourist sites in the Pahalgam area, and there's no police personnel there, there are no CRPF, no BSF, no army. Does that appear to you to be odd that you've got this big area, so much tourism concentrated there, and no security forces around?
Rahul, in fact, the question you are asking, I spoke to 2-3 officers of that area. How's that there was no presence of armed policemen in a tourist place, which is blocked by so much of tourists. So one of the reply I got from one officer that, sir, there is an army camp nearby, so area security is ensured by that. And then there is CRP, some CAPF patrol twice a day in the morning and the evening, but no permanent presence of the armed policemen. So I found it very, very difficult to digest. I have remained DGP, and a place like this. Number one, I also would like to know how come a private person has this place, who gave him permission, what mechanism was devised to ensure security of tourists visiting this place, which has no access by road, and it's only by ponies and by track people go there. So who is this private person who had managed this place? I think all these aspects need to be looked into.
Atta Hasnain, sir, does this not seem particularly odd? I am told that there is an army camp, say about half an hour, 40 minutes of a trek away, but the fact that there's no police, no army, just doing. One is you have a patrol mission that goes by. That's one thing, but I would expect in a place like this with so much concentration of tourists for some police personnel to be present on the ground.
Rahul, you are absolutely right. There's no doubt about what you're saying is absolutely correct. But I'm sure that there will be an investigation and subsequently the facts will emerge. I can only speculate and tell you. To my mind, even in the time of VEDSAB, the degree of coordination between the army, police and the CRPF was intense. Now, I may like to remind everyone, this is the launch pad, this is the atom base for the Amarnath Yatra. When you look at Pahalgam, the areas around it, 2-3 kilometers either side of Pahalgam, is the security zone.
Yes.
And it's about time that the Amarnath Yatra starts on 3rd of July. It's about time that we started looking at the domination of these areas. Now that brings me to this term called domination. And someone as a professional, as Vaid Saab, would agree with me The term domination is the most important terminology in Kashmir. If you don't dominate these areas, you will leave them open to be occupied by terrorists. I remember a general officer commanding of mine who used to point the finger, point the light of his laser on a map and tell me, have we ever sent a patrol here? And I would say, what is the requirement of sending it there? There are no terrorists there. And he would correct me and say, where there are no terrorists, do domination there so that no terrorists come there.
No, but does that mean then that at some level there was a sense of complacency that people in the armed forces started believing the idea that normalcy has returned, that tourism is back, that nothing will go wrong? Because oftentimes we just tend to get complacent, and which is where problems start from. And the fact that there's nobody, it's not as if we had a couple of policemen and they got overpowered. We had nobody there, zero, zilch, nada.
Rahul, that would not be correct on my part. This is a very strong word we use, complacency. I don't think the armed forces or the police forces are ever complacent. It can be just a lack of efficiency, the inability to understand or comprehend. We have been there for the last 35, 36 years doing these operations. Passing it on is a very important aspect. And from time to time, people must continue to learn that this whole area of domination, this whole aspect of domination is such an important operation, which must continue. It's such a boring, such a repetitive operation, but it must continue. And that is something I'm sure in the investigations, people will bring it out.
Okay, Ajay Shukla, I think we're talking about different things here. One is to go and dominate heights or mountains or forests where you anticipate that terrorists may come. You want your patrols to go through those areas so the terrorists know that it's not safe for them. The other is, there's a big meadow where 1,000+ tourists come every day. They trek all the way up. The terrorists seem to know that the closest base is half an hour, 40 minutes away. The road is not motorable, so nobody can come quickly. They can do what they want, they have time. So the terrorists have wargamed this through. It seems, given the fact that there was no police personnel there, that the security forces didn't do that. I'm not expecting the army to be deployed over there because there's no post, but at least basic law enforcement should have been there, don't you think?
Yes, Rahul. The problem is it's always easier to be wiser after the attempt. We're now discussing an operation that took place yesterday, all the elements of which have left the place, and all we have is now a certain bunch of discussion points wherein the various TV channels around the capital, we will discuss what we did wrong, and we must have stable deterrence, and we must have this, and we must have that. The fact is, we do not do a very good job of putting in place the resources that are required. Instead, we believe that by deflecting the issues and the public discussions that should be underpinning all of our actions, we just sort of pull the wool over our own eyes, really. We sort of make it sound as if this was just a one-off and it'll be back to business as always. People will come and go, terrorists will get wiped out. It doesn't happen like that. You've got to do a sustained job of keeping the terrorists in their place. You've got to make sure that their checks and balances are all in place. You have to sack people who do not deliver at sort of important moments.
No.
And then we can talk about, we're doing our best to put deterrence.
No, but this is... Sure, but this is not a lapse. I'll explain the difference. A lapse would be if, say, there's a road opening party in that area, or for example, you have a patrol party in that area, and they come every day, but they didn't come that day. This is just a situation, Manoj Joshi, where we just didn't feel the need to deploy personnel in that area, which means A, it's a massive intelligence failure, B, I don't know what the local commanders and the police and the army are thinking, but they really should have. In hindsight, it looks like the most obvious thing to do, but what do you think they were thinking when they decided not to have anyone there?
I definitely think that this was a failure of assessment. One of the important parts, the most important part of intelligence often is assessment. That whatever intelligence you're getting, you got to assess it right, and I think the assessment was incorrect. You see, but in attenuation, I would also like to point out that, look, in 2022, a total of 30 civilians were killed in Jammu and Kashmir. In 2023, 12. in 2024, 31. Now in 2025, in one day, we've had 28. So what I'm trying to say is with these very low figures, there was a sense of complacency. There was a sense that, things have reached a point that we have reached a, qualitative shift has occurred and things are now fine. Tourism is functioning, even in 2011, we had that situation when, I went as a tourist and visited and stayed in Kashmir for a while. But you knew that to an extent, it was the forbearance of the terrorists. The terrorists held back because they wanted to please their Kashmiri links. In this case, very clearly, the terrorist attack has been completely, has blasted the Kashmiri links. They have trashed their Kashmiri links. The Kashmiris are extremely unhappy. This has been a disaster. This has turned out to be a disaster for Kashmir.
But why would they do that, Brahma Chalani, given that the terrorists depend on OGW's overground workers, terrorist sympathizers called Hamdards for support? When you attack tourists in this fashion, you cripple the local economy, which by some estimates is worth 21,000 crore rupees just around tourism. There were 2.4 million tourists who came, according to figures put out by Omar Abdullah. That's a very big number in terms of just sheer number of tourists and in terms of the economic value that they produce. By attacking that, you're not just attacking these tourists, you're also attacking tourism in Kashmir. Why would the terrorists do that, you think?
That's because the terrorists behind yesterday's massacre are not local people. After all, why would they seek to undermine the local economy, which relies on tourism for sustenance? And that is also why there is such anger in Kashmir Valley against the slaughter of yesterday. For the first time in the Kashmir Valley, people have come out on the streets in solidarity with the victims and against the perpetrators of this terror attack. But I think we have to look beyond the law and order issue. Of course, we need to do whatever is necessary to deter terror attacks. But terrorism cannot be effectively contained if it's treated solely as a law and order issue that requires more and more security or manning every dominant height, for example. To regard terrorism as a law and order issue is to do what the terrorists want, to sap your strength. You keep deploying troops everywhere. No amount of security can stop terrorism if the nation is reluctant to impose sustained costs on the sponsors of terrorism. So as Mr. Modi himself said in November 2022, he said there must be a cost imposed upon countries that support terrorism.
So
now he has to translate his own words into action.
Absolutely. And therefore, there's that much more pressure on the Prime Minister and on the Home Minister on now walking this talk and delivering something which makes people feel that we have been able to avenge this terror attack. I'm joined by Piyush Mishra. The Cabinet Committee on Security meetings just got over. Amit Shah is still inside, but the others, Rajnath Singh and the other officials, have now left 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. Are you picking up anything at all? I'm told that there will be a press conference by the MEA after 9 p.m. tonight.
Well, certainly, Rahul, what we are now told is that there will be a press conference and that will happen soon after this meeting, which has now come to an end. The meeting went on for more than 2.5 hours, in which all the members of CCS were present, including Home Minister Amit Shah, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, NSA Ajit Doval was also there, Foreign Affairs Ministry Secretary Vikram Misri was also part of this, Jaishankar was also part of this. And after this meeting, which has now come to an end, what we are told is that Minister of External Affairs is now going to brief media about the current development. And as we are speaking, Rahul, Home Minister Amit Shah is still inside, and remember that he's the man with whom Prime Minister is in touch with since time attack has happened in Pahalgam. He was also directed by Prime Minister to go there at the site, and Home Minister not only held a series of meetings in Srinagar, but he also visited the spot where the attack took place. He also met with the bereaved families. After that, he is now back in national capital. He also took part in serious meeting, and after the meeting, which has now come to an end, what we're told is that he is still inside, and most likely the one-to-one talks are going on between Home Minister Amit Shah and PM Narendra Modi. He is most likely, is briefing Prime Minister about the current situation of Jammu and Kashmir.
Piyush Mishra for joining us. Thank you. We'll track, and interestingly, it's a Ministry of External Affairs briefing. So it's not the MHA briefing, it's not the army briefing, which they will after the operations get over. What do you think, Manoj Joshi, of the choice of the Ministry of External Affairs to do this briefing? Sending a message to Pakistan, sending a message to the international community as well?
Absolutely. I think that's the first stage. Very clearly, in the politico-military strategy, the political part of it is coming first. And I think, as I told you earlier, it's not unimportant. Right now, we have a very friendly situation, for example, with the United States. The United States still has an enormous amount of clout in the international system, as they have made evident in recent times. If we can persuade countries like the United States, Europe, Japan, to support us on this issue, I think we can squeeze the Pakistanis. Meaning, as I gave you the example of the Financial Action Task Force, I think that should be revived, and Pakistan needs to be squeezed.
General Hasnain,
on this issue.
in the conversation between Prime Minister Modi and American President Donald Trump, it appeared that America offered all possible help to India. For my understanding, is it possible for America, for example, to jam Pakistan's radar systems, to disable their air defense, so that India can go in and launch, given our current relationship? Is that something India can bank on, you think, and can America deliver?
See, Rahul, historically, the relationship of the United States with India has been, well, very, very good. But with Pakistan, it's not been bad either. And you know the geostrategic location of Pakistan, how important it is for the United States. We've all assisted in our times. And therefore, to expect anything very proactive from the United States, even in Trump 2.0, to my mind, is too large an expectation. And
you think it's too large an expectation? Let me put that same question to Brahma Chalani. Can we count on America to, for example, when the Indian attacks happen in whatever form and shape they do, to disable Pak air defense, to jam their radars, to ensure that our machines can go through, our fighters, whatever attack ultimately happens, they can succeed without that much of a pushback from Pakistan?
Well, the reaction from the Trump administration, from the highest level, from the president himself, the Secretary of State, the other senior officials of the administration on the Pahalgam attack, they have all come out in a very forthright manner, in a manner that we did not see when the Biden administration was in office, when there were acts of terror in India, or the way Biden stayed mum on the Chinese encroachments on Indian lands in Ladakh. He didn't say a word for the entire 4 years that he was in office. And in a sign of renewed counterterrorism cooperation, the FBI last week arrested a Khalistan militant accused of involvement in multiple terrorist attacks in India. So clearly, the relationship between the US and India is bouncing back from the Biden era setbacks. The drift is over, and Vance's trip to India signals a new chapter in the bilateral relationship. It's clear that the terrorists chose J.D. Vance's visit to maximize the impact of their terror attack. And
so you think there's a new phase in the relationship? Ata Hasnain disagrees. Let me put that question to Ajay Shukla for his sense on whether Delhi can count on DC to help mount this counter-offensive. They don't have to join the offensive, but help with their electronic systems. Colonel Shukla?
There is, as we had mentioned, a sort of a set of preparations and tasks that we have to do. a set of conditions that we have to create in our operational areas. And then having done these and put in place the wherewithal, we then wait for the moment to react. This is not difficult to understand. This is, and our military officers and so on are extremely competent people. But I don't think for a moment that we actually go ahead with a lot of these tasks. We fall short. We say that we'll do it later, and then later never comes.
No, but this is the moment. Manoj Joshi, for all the 56 inch ki chhati, ghar mein ghush ke marenge, we'll give a mutor jawab. This is the time. There hasn't been a terror attack of this nature in a very long time. Definitely not under the Modi Sarkar. Definitely not on tourism. Therefore, if the Prime Minister, the Home Minister are truly outraged, this is the time to strike.
Absolutely. I have no doubt in my mind. And my point is that Balakot and the Uri attack, so-called surgical strikes, was simply not enough. They did not deter Pakistan one bit. In 2 months after the Uri strike, there was an attack on the Nagrota cantonment, where the 16 Corps is headquartered. 10 soldiers died, and we didn't react. And this has been a pattern. Sunjuwan, cantonment attack, soldiers' families died in 2018. We didn't react. And we have not been reacting. I mean, look at last year when the tunnel attack took place, where the workers in the tunnel were killed in Gandarbal. We haven't reacted. We didn't react to the Riyasi, where 9 pilgrims were killed last year. So what I'm trying to say is that you need deterrence, and deterrence must be credible. Meaning you must do
but
something.
there is a risk, and I want to warn all our viewers about that, and I want SP Ved to talk about it. It's good that the government is signaling very clearly that there will be heavy consequences in Pakistan, but what the armed forces would not want, Mr. Ved, is that pressure be made that aaj karo, kal karo, parso karo. You need to allow the military commanders the leeway to decide when to strike. You don't want this national clamor to build in a way that the armed forces are then under pressure, because they need raw operatives on the ground to scout out the areas to see whether the targets that are going to be attacked are actually present there or not. You need to do your due diligence. You don't want to go in and throw a punch in the air.
Absolutely, Rahul. The operational part should be left to the field commanders, the chiefs of all the 3 forces. And I think that's what is being discussed today. The political leadership will lay down what could be the options and what could be the cost. After all, Pakistan is going to respond. So all options have to wait and let them have the freedom when and how to choose.
No, I want General Hasnain to talk a bit about this, because this is important as you think about when India's response comes, for people to have patience. And while political signal will be given in the CCS meeting, and that's already happened, to allow for the army chief, the CDS and the troops in Northern Command the freedom to choose when and where to attack and how to attack. Don't put them under pressure.
See, Rahul, this is something which is not a knee-jerk reaction as such. This is something well thought out. And even in normal peacetime, while we have been at war virtually for the last 36 years, all these contingency plans are there. It's not that the chief and his advisors have to now put their heads together to decide what the options are and what has to be selected, etc. These are all available and easily. The only thing is that you have to look at the contingency and match the reality to the contingency. There is one thing which I would always like to warn people about, and that is, so far India has only targeted the terrorist infrastructure. But the deep state in Pakistan is not necessarily consists of only the radicals who are also terrorists in many ways. The deep state consists of the ISI itself. The deep state is the Pakistan Army, elements of the veteran community of the Pakistan Armed Forces. All of them are stakeholders in the deep state. What aspects of the deep state can be targeted? Because if you want to make a difference, if you want to hurt him, You have to hurt the deep state. So that is why I would say, are we willing to actually target resources of the Pakistan Armed Forces, which will invariably evoke a response? Are we willing to do that?
But that could lead to war. So you attack, say, Pak Army serving officers or retired officers who work with the ISI.
Absolutely.
You succeed in that, Pakistan wants to respond, and then you have to manage the escalation ladder that could potentially lead to a far higher degree of conflict.
Absolutely. That's an option which you have to consider.
Do you think we should go for it, Brahma Chelani? Go after not just these random terror camps or launch pads, go after the Pak Army officers like the Americans and the Israelis did with General Suleiman of Iran?
General Hasnain has raised a very relevant point that unless you do not take on the Pakistani deep state, you may not be able to deter Pakistan effectively. But I think there's a more important point that we must keep in mind. India must fight Pakistan on Pakistani soil rather than fight Pakistan on Indian soil. Thus far, we have been trying to fight Pakistan on Indian soil. This strategy has to change. We have to take the fight to Pakistani soil. And why not use the same means as Pakistan does, unconventional means? Why are we only talking about kinetic means? Sure. Direct military action will come with risks, and its deterrent effects are likely to be more limited than unconventional strikes. Unconventional strikes can be staged recurrently. To take the battle to the Pakistani territory, India needs to be less reactive and more proactive. And that also demands that India should be willing to continue to impose costs on a sustained basis. Only then will there be sufficient deterrence created against any further Pakistani terror attacks on Indian soil.
Okay, so we've had an important discussion. I don't want to get too much into technical details because you don't want to be giving ideas to anybody watching elsewhere. But the fact is, as General Hasnain said, the options are well known. Now it's for the political establishment to signal which of those options they want to implement. And once that option is picked for the implementation of the options from the available choices about where to target, who to target and how to target for the armed forces to decide that, make no mistake, there will be an attack and there could possibly be a response. Clearly, Pakistan itching for a fight. We'll track all that happens very, very closely. I want to thank our guests for joining us on the news track. We're slipping into a break. We'll have more for you when we come back on the other side. Stay with us.